Tuesday, September 18th, on 77 South, towards Marietta in Ohio. Got a 31-foot something or another. It's pretty light, 5,000 and change actual weight. GBW 7,000 something. So this one is technically a backhaul, but it's going from Akron, Ohio to Roanoke, Virginia. I don't know how that's really back, but I guess this company calls it reload, so, but it's not really. It just kind of worked out because it was the Akron Camping World's an hour from the house, so that's not so bad, but 300 something miles. Be there today, 5-6 hours I think we got left. So the load boards are still freaking dead. I mean, we sat around all day yesterday looking for something to do, and there's just nothing. And then this one came up, so we took it. I mean, it's not ideal. It's only 300 something miles, 400 miles, whatever, doesn't matter. But it's short, and there's nothing on the board still. So tomorrow or tonight we'll drop this thing off and then start heading home, I guess. But I don't know. That's it. So Paul asked in the comments about dually versus single axle and all that stuff. Well, so it's kind of all based on weight. So if you don't have a CDL, you can't haul over 26,000 pounds. So if you don't have a CDL, the best truck you can get is a 3/4 ton because it's lighter than the 1 ton. So like this truck from the factory, I think was, I don't know, full tank of gas plus a toolbox and all that crap, probably just over 8,000 pounds. Well, a similar dually would be over 10,000. So since you're only allowed 26, then you know that's 2,000 less pounds if you have a dually. Now they have single axle 1 ton or single wheel 1 tons. So, you know, but that I don't really see an advantage. I mean, I guess I'm sure that there is. I mean, you know, the ultimate weight you could carry would be more, but you still can't go over the 26. And if you're gonna go over a 26, you know, you're gonna get a CDL and, you know, plate yourself for, you know, 40,000 or whatever the heck they do. I'm not sure, but if you're gonna do that, then you shouldn't get the single axle because then you are limited, or the single, not the single axle, the non-dually. Then you're limited on how much weight you can carry. But if you're not getting a CDL, you have no intention of getting a CDL, then the 3/4 ton is better just because it's lighter. So you could carry more weight. Now, I wouldn't, but you know, my truck fully loaded with the fuel tank and all that stuff is just under 10,000, so I could put a 16,000 pound trailer on this thing. I wouldn't, because they don't pay enough to justify beating the crap out of your truck with a 16,000 pound trailer, but you could. So, whereas if you had a 1 ton and no CDL, you would be limited to a 14,000 pound trailer. And a lot of those big fifth wheels definitely get over 15,000, 16,000 pounds. So that's something to keep in mind if you're truck shopping. Sorry. What else? There's more money to be made if you put a trailer on your truck, like a flatbed or whatever on your truck. So if that's the way you want to go, then I would start with the dually. What's that? The other YouTube channel, the Truck and Travel. I think he saw the writing on the wall when he started pulling campers. That's why he bought the dually, and then just went from there and bought a trailer and started doing hot shot instead. There's more money in that for sure. But for us, that wasn't the goal. You know, we're more doing this to kind of travel. I mean, it's still, you know, we're still trying to make money and, you know, make a decent living out of it. But if money is your main driving force, I don't even know if I'd get into campers. I mean, there's probably more money driving a semi, whether you own it or drive it for somebody else. There's probably more money in it. I think ultimately we are making about about the same as a company driver, but at the end of the day, I own the truck, and I'm just driving a pickup truck. So, I mean, take that for what it's worth. I think you probably could do better for some companies, driving semi or whatever, but I don't know. I never really looked into it because it's not really what we're shooting for. Us is we're, going to drop off in Roanoke and poke around because it's an old city, that sort of thing. It's not, you just got to kind of figure out what your goals are and go from there. But so that's the deal with the 3/4 ton and 1 ton. I mean, for me, it's buying a dually. That's another set of tires you got to buy. But the funny thing is, this truck, buying the Laramie, it's got 20-inch rims, so I pay more for 4 tires than the dually guys pay for 6. So it's kind of a wash. I mean, yeah, I could put 17-inch rims on this thing and sell these or whatever, but doesn't really matter. So that's it. Hopefully we get another load this week. We'll see. It's Thursday, September 20th. On my way to pick up number 36. I think this one's going to Manassas, Virginia. Nothing special, just a trailer. I'm listening to this book called The Undoing Project, and it's a very dry book, borderline textbook dry, but it has a bunch of fascinating insights into the human condition, how the mind works and how you think and stuff like that. And the one example that they gave, it was a math problem, and it's a math problem that you had 5 seconds to answer, and you couldn't do it in your head that fast. So it was, you just had to kind of guess, give an estimate, and they gave it 2 ways. So it's a pretty simple. It's 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6 times 7 times 8. And you got 5 seconds to come up with an answer. And the answer is 40,320. Most people came up with a much, much, much lower number. And they also gave the same question the other way. So 8 times 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. And it's multiplication, so obviously the answer is the same. But the groups of people gave different answers, like by a lot. And it just had to do with how the brain works and stuff like that. It was just, I don't know, it's interesting. It's not pertinent to anything trucking related, but I thought it was interesting. So we're, let's see, this is going to be another really, really short week, but I guess some random news. We did buy a tow car, and my wife is following me right now. We're going to drop it off and have the tow hitch put on the front of it so we can do some drive-away type stuff. It's happened quite a few times in the last, since the slowdown in July, that we would have been able to take 2 drive-aways to the same place or close to the same place, and there hasn't been any trailers to pull. So we started looking. There's a I'll put a link in the description. There's every year they post it's a magazine, some kind of Dinghy Towing magazine or whatever, I don't know, RV magazine. Every year they post a list of all the cars that can be flat towed, and it's pretty slim pickings. If you go back a number of years, it's easy. Most of the companies have a weight limit of 4,000 pounds, so that's not necessarily a super difficult thing to manage. The issue becomes, how much do you want to spend on a car versus is it light enough versus is it comfortable enough to sleep in? So if we drop something off in San Diego, we're going to have to sleep in this car. so you want it to be somewhat comfortable. I mean, we managed to sleep in the front seats of the truck, so how bad could it be? But at the same time, it's not super comfortable to sleep in the front seats of the truck. So right now we're working on a bed for the back. But so we kind of started looking at the list of possible cars to tow, and their reliability records, and things like that. And then how much did we want to spend? If we wanted to go cheap, we're talking about cars that are 10 plus years old. You want to stay around $5-6 grand or whatever. Then the problem becomes finding one that's reliable enough that you would trust to drive across the country. The easy answer in that price range for us was the Honda Element. But some of the issues with the Element, if you look it up, they got some pretty cool camper setups in the back for the Honda Element. But the issue becomes the automatic transmission in the Hondas requires a very specific sequence in order to flat tow it. So that was a concern. Now, I guess the good thing is you can get a Honda Element with a manual transmission. So that's easy. You just throw it in neutral, turn the key to accessory so the steering wheel doesn't lock, and off you go. So we went and test drove one, and it was pretty beat. It needed a lot of work, and I just wasn't confident in buying it, and there wasn't enough Honda Elements in the area. I mean, I searched within 300 miles, and there just wasn't any. So we tossed around the idea of getting a Wrangler, a 4-door Jeep Wrangler, but number one, they're just a hair over 4,000 pounds, and number two, they only get 20 miles to the gallon. So it's like you're kind of kicking yourself in the foot just before you even start. And then, Jeeps aren't exactly known for their reliability. I mean, they're better than some cars, and they're easy to work on, I'll give them that. But, so that kind of went back and forth. And on top of that, in order to get one in good condition with low miles, you're talking close to 20 grand or better. So we started kind of going back and forth, and then we ended up with a trading her car in on a 2013 CRV. It was a certified pre-owned, whatever. Got a pretty good deal on it. I'm not unhappy. I mean, I normally wouldn't buy a CRV. It's kind of a mom's car or whatever, but it's nice. I don't know, whatever. It was a business decision. It's not really a car I would normally pick, but the issue is now we have that automatic transmission, and we're going to have to write a checklist, because you have to start the car and run it for 5 minutes, and then run it through all the gears, and then put it into drive for 5 seconds, and then put it in neutral, and then turn the key to accessory and make sure everything's off so it doesn't kill the battery, and then you can tow it. Well, if you go into reverse before you go into neutral, it'll grenade the tranny. So it's kind of a process. And then on top of that, every time you stop to get fuel for the camper, you got to do this whole process again, to get the fluid running through the transmission. So, it's a concern. And I think once we find out how the money is, if it's worth it, we'll end up buying an Element, and with a manual transmission, and I'll tear it all apart, replace all the sensors and everything, so I don't have to worry about reliability as much. But so yeah, that's it. I mean, we on that big truck she took, we made more than double what I would make towing a trailer. Now that doesn't account coming back, so that's only one way, but the cost per mile to operate the CRV is almost half the cost to operate the truck. So it's not quite double the profit if we were to just tow a car out with that thing and then drive back, but it's more than the profit on doing towaways. So I mean, that's one or two driveways that we've come up with that number. So it's not like it's a guarantee. You know, it's better to do driveways. But I think maybe if you were considering it at this point, I might say, you know what, go buy yourself a $5,000 or $6,000 beater that you can flat tow and try it that way. Because worst case scenario, you do a few of them, you don't like it. All right, you're not out anything. Whereas for me, I bought a $60,000 truck that I didn't need. You know, so I would have been, if I didn't like it, I kind of would have been screwed. Well, not screwed, because I still like the truck, but it's something to consider, I guess. I don't know, but don't jump, don't do anything rash. I'll give me a couple months of doing the driveways, and I'll have a little bit more information, a little bit more of a data set to say, how much it makes and all that stuff. But from what I'm seeing now, it seems like you could make almost as much, if not more. And there's also some advantages with DOT regulations and stuff like that. You don't have to run log books when you're on your way back and all that stuff. But that's kind of, it's a gray area. Both of the companies that I worked for that did driveway, they said that you don't have to log as long as when you get back to pick up your next one, there's a 10-hour break. I don't know. It's kind of weird. I'm not really sure. Don't quote me on anything. That's something I'll have to really look into. But yeah. So other than that, the hooking up the tow hitch and all that stuff's like $1,500. Whatever. We got the more expensive one, of course, because that's what I do. I don't. I don't know. But it folds up in the front. You don't actually have to take the hitch off the car. So I don't know. We'll see. And that's the installed price, because I don't want to do it. So we'll pay Elkhart Hits to do it. We'll see. I don't know. But so that's it. That's what we're doing now. And then hopefully these loads pick up. There was a crap ton going to Virginia and North Carolina yesterday. They're pretty much all gone now. Like there was 40 something. But so we grabbed one of these Virginia ones. There was one to South Carolina, but I was a little bit concerned about going through North Carolina. It may or may not have gone through some of the roads that are probably still closed from Florence, but whatever. So that's what we're doing now. We'll see.